Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever you are in the world. Today we are shifting gears a bit on subject, and we're moving to global expansion, international market. But before we start or even introduce our guests, I'd like to share a joke. How I would call it, and hopefully, it will make sense to you. An American cereal company decides to expand into Italy, the Italian market. The
Ciao
launch,
Bella.
ciao Bella. They launched a massive campaign, a marketing campaign, plastering billboards all over Rome, and their slogan says, "Try our cereal, you'll feel great." And great was spelled with GRRRRREAT. After weeks of zero sales, they hire a local marketing consultant, and the consultant takes one look at the billboard and burst out laughing. "What's so funny?" asked the confused CEO. The consultant replied, "In Italian, great sounds exactly like great. You've been telling everyone your cereal will make them feel like cheese, and who wants to be feeling like a cheese?" So that is our joke for today. That's going to lead us to global market. And with us, none other than my colleague and friend Támer Flores, the maestro of global expansion, specifically, I guess, Latin America. And today we are going to dive into a fun subject that I personally like, and that's market expansion, international business. Welcome to the show, Támer.
Thank you, Mona, for the invite, and thank you, Maria. It's a pleasure being here. As you know, my name is Támer Flores. Married for 27 years. I have 3 grown-up children, and for 17 years, I was the CEO of a medical device distributor company.
Mhm.
I'm expert in medical devices, pacemakers, and others. And for 25 years, I've been an innovative visionary focusing on growth, revenue, business development strategy. And I have founded my own company, which is named BizDeGlo, that stands for Business Development Global Consulting. So it's the first syllables of each word. And with that, I help companies grow by becoming their fractional chief growth officer. And I do that internationally more than anything else. Lately, I've been working as a consultant, a fractional professional, driving whole international growth, revenue, and global expansion strategies for my clients. And with, for example, one of them, I spearheaded a $15 million and $20 million in new sales in the first 2 years that I worked with them. So if they follow plan, they'll probably be growing $500 million in the following 10 years. And those are some of my results. And I call myself Maestro of Global Expansion Orchestra because I direct the orchestra, but I don't play all the instruments. We need all the talent and the specialists like you and all the professionals to play their own instruments. And I just get there and direct everything so that everything flows perfectly.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. And we could not have picked a better guest for today's show than you. And for our viewers, of course, in today's increasingly interconnected world, companies are constantly seeking new opportunities to extend their reach and tap into fresh markets. But venturing into a territory that you're not familiar with comes with its own set of challenges and complexities. One question that I will ask you, Támer, is what are the common challenges companies face when entering new markets?
I would separate that in two because I help 2 kinds of companies: US companies going overseas or foreign companies coming here to the US. So in general, the answer is cultural differences for both. And that's where you can help with all your knowledge. But basically, for international companies coming here, their main issue is thinking that, economically speaking, they can make all the money that the US has to offer for their customers, but they want to spend as little as they spend in their own countries. So if they can hire a professional there for $100, and here in the US it costs $10,000, for just saying whatever number, they want to hire that same specialist for $100, and they cannot change their mind to understand that their competitors here are spending the $10,000. And if they want to compete here, they have to spend as much as their competitors spend here in the US. So that's a cultural situation that is hard for them to go through. I mean, they understand it, but they don't want to really believe it. So they think that they can have shortcuts.
Is that because the budget, or is just because they don't understand it, or they don't want to understand it?
Both, because basically the budget is important, but if they want to come here and make the profits that the US can offer, then they for sure has to understand that the budget has to grow. So it's kind of a mix. It's difficult for them to understand that. And then from US companies going overseas, that's not a big deal because usually the professionals here are more expensive. So when they go there, it's like, oh, that's cheap, that's good. But basically, their problem is cultural also because almost everybody, not only the US, but everybody thinks their culture is the best way, the only way, the right way. And you know more than I do. And then they try to market the same way they market here. And many times it doesn't work. And they just don't want to break that and start changing the way they market or the way they hire or whatever way they use for doing business here. And that's different. That's difficult for them.
Let me ask you a question. We actually talked a little bit about assumptions and expectations in a previous podcast, but how do you prepare somebody who's intent on expanding their market in a foreign country without knowing what to expect, or how do you overcome those assumptions beforehand so that they're not in for a rude awakening once they start having to deal with some of the barriers, etc.?
Of course, you have to go through the steps and get them to hire you to be able to do that first. And that's kind of a problem sometimes. But the main deal here is what I do is I work 1 to 3 months talking to the executives of that company. So I can do mainly 10 executives per month, and I take notes of everything. I make summaries of everything they say. I get all their expectations together because sometimes the president has a different ambitions, different the growth, like different than the CEO, different than the VP of growth, VP of finance, and things like that. So you get them all separate. You get all their thoughts. You put them all together. And you make a summary, and then you get them all together, and in a meeting you explain them, this is what you think, this is what you expect, and reality and experience tells us this is what is feasible. And that's the way I overcome that.
So like you have the period between start to having consensus or having an acceptance that yes, they will go with you and they will hire you through this process. How long does it usually take?
Should take a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But sometimes it takes a little longer because they are looking for other alternatives, which is great. If they do that, I'm happy. Yeah. But sometimes they don't know exactly what they want. And that's the big problem, right? They are not sure. Again, everybody thinks, hey, the US is the biggest market in the region. We want to make all those $1 million that the competitors are doing there. But they don't decide and don't take in consideration everything that they need to do for doing that, right? And that's basically time, money, and effort, right? 3 things that are very important. And if they don't align that, it takes a while for them to decide.
What are the key factors that every company entering whatever market needs to consider?
That's a good question. Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, I have created a flow chart that helps deciding which markets, how to enter a market. And it's a flow chart in general that has 3 easy questions. So sometimes you can think that, that's not very difficult. And it is not. But if you ask somebody how to define with 3 easy questions, how to enter a market, they're probably not going to be able to tell you. But once I explain my flow chart, everybody's going to understand, and it's very easy. So basically, you have a few general conditions, and what I recommend is a country where American companies are perceived in a positive way, and a country where the niche is big enough and has a reliable economic capacity or credit system for your products or services. Basically, they have enough money for your products. Those are initial conditions. And then the first question I ask is if the company is willing to invest money, time, and effort on a fully owned enterprise in this location. So basically, do you have enough money that you want to handle your own company there? time and effort, because sometimes they have the money, but they don't have the time, or they don't want to put the effort. I did put that question there because I was working with a client and they had everything to be successful, but they didn't want to put the effort. So that's the first question for that reason, because sometimes they can do it, but they just don't want to. So if the answer is yes, you go to the other two questions. And the second question is if the niche income is and the industry prices in that market are similar or greater than in the US. So basically, if the products and services cost similar to what it costs in the US, because we're talking about US company going overseas, you have, of course, two possibilities, yes and no. And if the answer is yes, the best alternatives are acquisition and subsidiary. And if the answer is no, so there's not, the products are not as expensive as in the US, then the options are joint venture and franchise. And then you go to the third question, which will help you really define what strategy is best, is if are there a great number of competitors in that territory? So that is a big, important question. Are there competitors there? The market has lower prices and there are competitors. If there are many competitors, then you have to go through a joint venture, because you don't want to start over in a market that has already a lot of competitors. You need somebody who already knows the market, and that's a joint venture. If there is a few competitors, then the best strategy is franchise, so that you minimize your risk. And finally, if there are no competitors, the actual recommendation is not to enter that market, because there's something there why your services and products are not offered there. And then from the other side, let's say that, yeah, the prices are good in that market. And if there are a great number of competitors, then the best thing to do is an acquisition. Again, you want to get into the market with people that already know the market, that have developed. And acquisition there is worth it, because we're saying there is enough money in that market for that, and you spend the money for it and you get the reward. If there are only some companies, they are competitors, then the best thing to do is subsidiary or a new full ownership. Basically, create your own company and start from scratch. And that's possible because you don't have too many competitors, right? If you would have too many competitors, that would be too difficult. Then you would go again to acquisition, as I said before. And finally, if there's no competition, then it's probably more likely that you evaluate the opportunity for going back to the other side of the flow chart and do a joint venture or a franchise. Because again, if there's no competitors, it's probably not a signal of your product or service, your industry will be successful, and you have to minimize risk. And for doing that, you go to joint ventures and franchise.
It sounds like you're starting first with the big picture so that you can see the forest and not just the individual trees, which I assume some people might, in their optimism, be looking at only a little section of the forest, whereas you're trying to show them the bigger picture and maybe navigate the forest in the best way so that they don't get lost. That's what I'm
Correct.
hearing.
And the whole explanation I made is to balance risk and revenue, right? Where there is going to be more revenue, you can tolerate to have more risk. Then you can think about acquisition. But where there is not enough revenue, why would you risk so much and do an acquisition there? Then the best options are, joint venture or franchising, depending on the quantity of competitors. I was talking to a colleague this week on Monday, and he told me that some clients of him asked, hey, there are no competitors. That's a good thing. We're going to be the first, and we're going to be, we're going to break the market. And he's like, no, that's not a good thing. And exactly the same that I have in my flow chart, he got there with a different route, right? But it's the same conclusion. No competitors is not good. It's not a good signal. It's not like you're going to break the market and be successful really quick because you don't have competitors.
Well, how could you determine whether there's no competitors because it is a feasible product, it just hasn't broken through in the correct culturally attractive way, or if it's just something that there is no demand for? How can you make that distinction? Is that something you would do through market research?
Correct. That's the right answer. So you would do that through market research. Of course, to do something is a guide, but it's not, like 100% follow these. You probably could have hypothetically a case where the market is good and nobody's there yet. It could happen. So you go through market research, which I do through several different tools that I have, or companies or institutions that can help me doing that market research. But basically, you can do it yourself, and you have to be smart when doing that, and you have to hire a good company that is smart for that market. And then that will tell you if it is a good idea or not to enter a market that has no competitors. Yes. In general, I would say that most likely it's not.
Huh. Now, Tamer, is your profession, what do you see? Is it male dominated? Do they have women doing the same thing you do? How does it look like?
I think it's not male dominated. We have great professionals like you, and I've met a lot of women in this spectrum, and it's great. It's great to work with them because there's cultural differences everywhere and in every step, in every gender. And I always say, don't generalize in culture. For example, I'm Peruvian, and people would say that maybe I go fast through things and I don't think too much about them, but I'm an engineer. I analyze things. So I do analyze quick, but I don't go through the decision so fast. I do my analysis. So I don't fit the Peruvian personality in general. So you have to be careful also when you create these charts or these tables with how do you see this culture in general. And there are many interesting topics there. Mona knows
Yes.
more about this than I do. But just always keep in mind, in the back of your mind, this person could be different than what the 90% of that culture is, right?
That's what we were talking about, Mona, before we started. Do you want to expand on that?
Please, Mona, do.
What did we talk about again? The assumption for the negotiations, right?
Correct.
Yes,
how that could be different.
Things are changing so quickly that you can't make generalizations anymore, right, Mona?
Exactly, with the globalization, and there are a lot of professionals and they're fine at what they do, but they go out there and teach on the topic based on books that were written 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Things are evolving, and globalization definitely has an impact on societies. Not only that, technology, social media, now everything is so intertwined. For the Peruvian society, I do know that Peru has so many ethnicities. They have different ethnicities. And some came from Asia, which, based on my work with that part of Asia, they have so many traits, just same as in Japan or. Okay, so when you're talking about Latin America, don't make that assumption that Latin America has, okay, you can put everybody's in one basket. That's how they do it. You just got to be different. And the other day, I mentioned it on my session last week when somebody asked me, how do you do business with Chinese? I said, what Chinese are you talking about? We're talking about age. We're talking about geography. We're talking about people who were born and raised and never left China. And then there's so many components when you're dealing with somebody. And that's why I am so adamant about using personality profile and connect it to the culture, because the personality profile of an engineer in Zimbabwe, for example, is not going to function or operate or think the same as an engineer in the United States, as an example. So we have to be conscious not only about the culture, but about the person you're dealing with relative to the culture that you're working with. And speaking about culture, Tamer, my question would be, are you seeing, I know that this business is money oriented, decision oriented. There are not a lot of emotion involved, but there may be some emotion involved, such as, well, I don't want to enter this market because I just don't like that culture or those people. Have you seen anything similar to having biases dictate whether I should go into a market or not?
Yes, but I try to see it the other way. Basically, as I said before, ask if the other culture will accept your product or services before, right? Mm-hmm. And then if that is a yes, then I can work with the company and tell them, it really doesn't matter too much what you think about them because this is a good market. Mm-hmm. And I can convince them. But I start on that side. I start on the market side towards your product and your services. On the other side, fortunately, I haven't seen too much of that. I haven't, and that's good. You could say certain bias there against the other culture, and I haven't seen it, and I'm glad I haven't. But it always work a little bit when there is some doubts, but not when there is discrimination, right? So
I have another question. Having been an international relations major, I'm always interested in the political landscape. And I see that that's something that you also analyze, right? So, for example, right now, many of my friends in Mexico with the recent elections and all that, what are some of the things you need to consider? For example, is the new government going to be friendly towards business, or am I going to have to consider certain things? That's also a factor that you have to consider when considering risk and how to mitigate it. How do you navigate the political landscape or the environment in order to be able to better advise your clients? Anything that, and if you have an example, that would be wonderful.
yes, first of all, I'm very well informed of many things, right? Of the political side. Second, I research even more when there's time to enter a market. Third, I'm very calm about it. I don't think just for saying something, a country that has had a kind of a right wing political party, then it gets for the first time a left wing political. I don't think changes are going to happen in 4 or 5 years. So it's not something that you should be afraid of unless the politician has completely expressed from the campaign, we are going to close all these, or we are going to not allow these other countries, or we are going to nationalize all the money or nationalize this industry. Unless the new president has said that during the campaign, I really don't worry too much about it. You have to see more than those 4 years or 5 years that the politician is going to be the president. Still, analyze better, be careful, but don't react just because of one politician. You have to go further than that. You have to analyze more. And that would be my recommendation. Yes.
With the rapid shifts in global market and the rise of BRICS and possible monetary transformation or change and everything that we're seeing happening, where the world is no longer unipolar but multipolar, where a lot of countries are pulling the strings for hegemony, and soon we will have a lot of competitors in the world stage. Does that affect the work you do, or does that affect companies planning to enter certain markets now versus wait to see?
Yeah, because I understand that companies are a little more wary than I am. So I don't worry too much too fast, but companies do, and that's how markets react, and the price of the currency goes up and down because this has happened very quick, and I'm more relaxed in that sense. But I also understand that's not most of the cultures or most of the people. Most of the people just want to be careful and don't risk at all if they hear the minimum thing they think is a problem, and they don't want to enter a market because of that, and I respect that. But I'm more like, don't make decisions in one day. Just go through it, research, several years of situations and stuff. I have, let me tell you this. I have a person, a potential client of mine, that basically told me, I want to go to Uruguay. And I'm like, do you know Spanish? No. And why? It's like, I'm bored, and I'm already don't want to be here because I don't like both parties candidates in the US. I don't like who they are. I don't like him. I don't like him. I think it's a disaster. It's a problem, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I hear that Uruguay is very stable, which it is. Okay. And it has a very good education, which they have. And, the Uruguay is very good in several things, and the population is not so big in Uruguay. So that's also, you can wonder why they have such a good soccer team. But that's another topic. And he wants to go to Uruguay because he doesn't like the political options in his own country. And I respect that. And I would, if he told me he would call me in 3 months. That was a month ago. So maybe in 2 months he calls me. and I can help him through that process.
Huh. Funny that you mentioned this, Tamer, because yesterday I was part of a global conference on international investments and expat and topics related to living abroad. And it just, I was baffled by the number of Americans moving to different parts of the world just because either political situation or the cost of living or just fed up with pretty much everything. They said, you know what, we want to try something new. And I had put a post on it as far as where Americans are heading, and I found that the first destination is Mexico because of the proximity and it's near and they can hop in here back and forth. Then
Right.
there is Portugal, there is Spain, there is Costa Rica, and there's Panama.
Right.
And for African Americans, there's Ghana as a prime destination now, and it's been for a few years and it's just booming. And given the fact that things are changing, I was talking to Maria and just got off the phone or a virtual meeting with someone with a Spaniard situated in Morocco. And he has offices throughout the world. And he said, this is exactly what he said. He said, look, Africa is the market to be. It is developing, and pretty much everything is needed here. Therefore, companies across the globe are rushing in to see which market they will or they can secure. So the tendency of what we're used to as far as being here in the United States or people immigrating to the United States, still a great place for people to come and build their future, have opportunities. But we are also seeing a lot of Americans, which we did not see before. They're actually immigrating abroad and looking for better
Right.
quality of life. So that is something that is interesting, and we
Right.
have to see how it plays out.
Yes, and that's for sure. I think some of them also are thinking about taxes.
Yeah,
Spend less money in taxes, and there's a lot of good reasons to go and live somewhere else, and there's a lot of different preferences and stuff. So I guess that's important, and also that at that point they will appreciate people from other countries coming into your own country, right?
yeah,
And it has happened in South America, where Venezuelans have gone everywhere. First we were like, okay, why it is not easy to go to the US or go to Spain, go to Italy and live there, and it's not easy. They don't accept you so fast, so quick. And then when Venezuelans started moving away from their country, many countries were like, yeah, don't do that, it's like too many. And why? But you were wishing, or you wanted to do that, to go to North America and Europe, but then you don't want that to happen when they're coming to your country. There's this duality of thinking depending on in which side you are, right?
yeah. I am definitely enjoying our conversation here this time, and we can be talking all day. But you have final thoughts, and maybe final thing is any tips that you can give, final tips that you can give anyone thinking, okay, I have this idea, I have these products, I have these services, I want to take them abroad. What tip can you tell them or give them?
Well, this is going to sound like self, you know, trying to get more business, but that's exactly what you need to do. You need to hire somebody that has done it before, that can help you walk through the path. That person is not going to walk for you; it's going to help you go through that process. I mean, that you would do for anything that is new for you, right? So even if you're going to change the filter of your car and you have never done it, you go through YouTube and you check the expert how they do it. And if it is a little more difficult than just watching a video, then you have to hire a person to do it. And in this case, it's a little more difficult than just changing your filter, yourself in your car. So basically, that would be the most important part. Get somebody that knows, that has done it and has experience, that can guide you. And yeah, I think that's the best advice. And this is what I do, but it's also what many other people do. So choose
Yeah.
one, and then when you run into culture situations, go with mana. What why wouldn't you?
Well, you heard it. Whether you are a startup looking to go global or an established corporation seeking to broaden your horizon, Our pro here, Támer Flores, offers valuable insight, services, and strategies for your international growth strategy. So I am so thankful that you took from your time to be with us. We have definitely learned something new, and I look forward to working with you in the future and having you for more subject. Perhaps the market will be changing so fast that we need you to come back again.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Mona. Thanks, Maria. I could talk to you, for hours and hours, and I could
Yes,
take over your,
your
your
platform.
your program. So don't invite me too much because I'll be running it. So
Well, where can they find you, Támer?
that email over there, tflores@biztheglow.com, and biztheglow is with a Z. tflores@biztheglow.com. We will answer immediately.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And until next episode, stay safe, stay well, and stay global. Thank you.
Thank you, and I hope you have as much fun as I had.
Yes, we did.